Hi, Silas. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you, Josh.
Yeah, it was great to meet you, particularly for this film, because I had so much fun watching this one. I just thought it was awesome, to be honest. Really unexpected premise, and I was actually quite surprised that it wasn't based on a book or anything along those lines. But I'm guessing that really fantastic screenplay you had to work with was must have been a big part of what drew you to the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for saying the kind words about the film. The original script came from this wonderful writer, Winona. And then I was developing it with the producers for a year or so, and we had a couple different writers. Becca Green ended up being the one that brought it home off of Winona's great premise. But yeah, it was fun to also make it like find our way into the story. And it's such a great premise and such an oddness. I love an odd approach to things that are maybe more common, or more like, classic storytelling, but then you get to mess with those tropes.
Yeah, for sure. And I do feel like there could have been a version of this movie that was maybe much darker and like a full-blown horror almost. But would that have appealed to you as much compared to obviously the fun, almost John Hughes style high
Yeah.
school movie you get to tell here?
Yeah, no, I'm not a big horror fan. Yeah, I just am not. I did an assistant editing job on horror movies, and I was like, it was torture for me to have to try and watch them. But I love yeah, I love the metaphor of the supernatural. I love the metaphor of like powers that we get from painful situations we've survived. Um, and comedy is my favorite, especially gallows humor. I think we need enough. We need more humor with difficult things, and we certainly need platforms to talk about death and loss because everybody goes through it, but it can be very isolating. So I hope that this is funny and also helps people feel like, oh yeah, I can talk about things or connect.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, at the heart of the film, you have got this really fantastic young cast. So when it came to finding the four leads, was that quite a big challenge for you? Or did you have some ideas early on that you knew who would be right for these roles?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had ideas. I wanted them to be close to the age of high school experience. I think it's important for authentic casting to actually have that. And I knew I really the cast just presented themselves. We had great casting directors in South Africa and in the US. But once we saw like the people, it was so clear who was the right person. And yeah, it was a little bit effortless that way, and full support of the studio to have an inclusive cast, which is not always easy because of a system that's not had roles often for inclusive casting. So a lot of support all around. And then these kids have been working; they're all professional, and they just brought everything to it. They just everybody, and Tony Danza and Wayne Knight were really fun to work with. And again, very little, dialogue on the page, but they brought so much heart and character. The kids actually really loved their role in particular. So yeah, and Derek Luke as well, just brought so much. Who plays Darby's dad? So yeah, just like it's true ensemble in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, but it comes together great. And I know something I appreciated is this high school. It avoids the sort of familiar cliche trappings. We do have a jock and a nerd, but they're not the typical. There's a lot more to them. And it's a really diverse high school as well, which I think is great representation of what high schools are like now. So was it obviously very important to you that Darby and the Dead does reflect the world in that way? And that was a priority going into the project?
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a lot of thought to cast well and cast against this typical casting. So I feel like again I had a lot of support to overthink everything, and a lot of support and trust with the cast to make the roles their own. And I think that was great because I feel like we don't do that enough, is listen to the actors, especially in authentic casting, to like, oh, does this feel right? Does that feel right? How can we make it more specific and therefore more universal? So that it took, I think it takes a lot of thought and listening as well, and trust. But and I love that the cool guy, the jock, is cries a lot and has a lot of feelings, and that Alex, the nerd guy, is actually really cool. He's kind of like ahead of his time, and so that was fun to kind of play with those. We talked about that a lot. Asher Angel and I talked a lot about James being a cool guy with a lot of feelings, so he's not
Yeah.
afraid. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm curious, when you were directing Riel and Ali, obviously in those moments where the rest of the cast are having to ignore the fact that Capri is haunting Derby, what was that like for you? Because that must have been quite unique to get all these actors and obviously all the extras to act the way you needed them to in these quite surreal moments.
Yeah, we had to remind people that they can't see her. And but actually Alex, yeah, well, I won't give that away, but I guess that's a spoiler thing. But we made all these rules, and then I was like, I made these rules and then we had to follow them. And sometimes it was frustrating, like, oh, she can't move this thing, or can she move hair? Like all of these kind of weird roles. But it was fun in particular when Darby goes to James and Capri's there, and Capri's seeing James, her boyfriend, and he can't see her. And just the ways that they're interacting was really fun to have Riel and Asher have to just look at each other, and Ali just be moving around the room, interacting. It just presented a lot of fun comedic moments for sure.
Yeah, and of course, when Capri goes into almost poltergeist mode, I felt like obviously those moments, well, that's a lot of practical effects for you that you got to play around with those, because it felt quite old school in a really cool way, I thought.
Yeah, we did. We used rigging, some of the rigging and stuff, which was really fun to use. And then really simple. I think the only part that had more visual effects was the transitioning when we show the people going from one to the other. But yeah, it was a lot of like in camera stuff that I think is just fun, especially if you want physical comedy. The least amount, and even her just falling through them was just simple green screen, and mimicking the motion. The one thing that was funny is when Riel walks through Ali. We had to do it where she walks up to her, stands, and then walks around her, goes behind her, and then it was just like a weird experimental theater moment, it felt like. But yeah, in camera stuff is fun.
Awesome. It feels like it's a film like Darby and the Dead. They don't come around that often, something that is, as I said, truly original and not necessarily based on anything or a sequel or, a reboot. But do you see this as something with franchise potential? Because again, no spoilers. I feel like that ending really sets up, you could go so many different places with this one.
Yeah, it would be fun to have a Darby and the Dead sequel for sure. It seems like there's potential for that. But yeah, I didn't think of it like that, but it definitely felt like it had an open ending. And actually the original script also felt like it had an open ending. That was always part of the design of it. So yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love that.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And for you, looking to the future on a different note, do those Marvel projects and DC projects, do those interest you as a filmmaker, or is that not something you're quite ready to go ahead and delve into just yet?
I think I would be fine with that. I've always thought, because I've done 3 independent features prior to this is my first studio film, I was prepared to have my soul crushed, and my soul was not crushed. Actually, it was a really amazing experience with 20th Century Fox and Hulu, and the executives that I had there, Sarah and Steve, were just phenomenal. The producers, phenomenal. So yeah, I think I've made friends with big budget. I wouldn't mind. It would always have to be character. I'm no good if I don't connect to the character, and that's not even like I'm too good for it. It just means I won't be a good director. So yeah, I love character, and I think it's fun. It's fun to play with supernatural stuff as a metaphor, and so yeah, send them my way, Marvel. Come on.
Oh, fingers crossed. But for now, make sure people check out Darby and the Dead on Hulu and Disney Plus, because what a great movie, and can't wait to see what comes next. So thank you so much for your time, Silas.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
Awesome chatting. Thanks so much.